The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. Today we are finalizing the 2018 PGA Championship DraftKings Millionaire Maker picks. We're going to be talking about the weather, the tee draws, the potential stats that you need to target, how the course is shaping up. If you missed the full preview, the early reaction to the pricing with myself, Ben Raza, and Mike Leone, go back to the DraftKings YouTube channel, or DK Live, or DK Playbook, or my podcast feed. You can find it up there too. Yesterday's show with Feinberg, top notch, a lot of fun. We gave away some of our picks, and don't forget to check out my updated DraftKings cheat sheet on DKPlaybook.com sometime Tuesday night, plus Wednesday afternoon. You will see my betting cheat sheet pop up on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme. That will be directly following the 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time live chat with myself and Reed Fowler, taking all of your questions for as long as possible on the DraftKings YouTube channel. So make a bookmark of that, come back, give the episode a like, and boom, we're on our way. Give this episode a like as well, because I got some giveaways to announce on tomorrow's show, and you can get in right now. Here's what I want to know. Put your DK handle in the comment section after giving the episode a like, and tell me the one player below $8,000 that, if you were forced to, you would play in 100% of your lineups. And maybe we'll get to the guy that I'm doing that way. Well, I'm not doing 100%, but if you had to, there is one guy that I do really like from down in that range, and I want to see who you guys like as well. Plus, if you leave a iTunes review, boom, you're in the draw. Plus, if you go to Twitter or Facebook and use the hashtag DKPGAChamp1 and retweet or share all of the content coming up for the PGA Championship, then at me your DK handle, boom, you're in the draw as well. Tons of money to be given away on Wednesday's show. Enough of that. Let's get into this. Rick Gahmen from DFS On Demand, the Rick Run Good YouTube channel, and the brand new podcast feed. Rick, what's going on, dude?
Yeah, brand new iTunes and Spotify. It's going well, Pat. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, do you feel like people are really getting into... I really like how you lay out your visuals when you do it, because I always watch your video instead of listening to it. But hey, I know way more people listen to this show than actually watch it. It's just another way for people to consume it when they're on the go.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably the number one most requested thing is to not sit in front of a YouTube browser for 20 minutes. So I try to do a good job of talking you through those visuals so that you can listen to it in the car or wherever you're going. And yeah, it seems to be pretty popular so far.
All right, I do want to let everyone know, too, it's not just golf that's going on with me. We got MMA stuff up for every single event, plus the Pat Mayo Experience football draft kit. If you go to facebook.com or even just hit the description, you'll see it in there. Over 20 shows now, all on-demand podcasts. The rankings are up to date, plus more shows to come. Don't be afraid to check that out. And if we're talking podcasts, we got mine, we got Rick's. Plus, we got Geoff Ulrich from Fantasy Golf Metric and DK Live. What's going on, dude?
Not too much. Just last major of the season. I honestly can't believe it's here.
It's been a grind, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's such a long golf season. I mean, we still got the playoffs to go after, but no, we're looking forward to this. I mean, last Millie Maker until probably March or April, and I mean, yeah, we're excited. We always get really excited at Fantasy Golf Metrics about the majors. So.
All right, what's the podcast people can subscribe to for you if they want to listen to your unique thoughts, not just me yelling at you?
Yeah, so I mean, we record one every Monday. It's Inward 9. You can check it out on my Twitter handle at the Fantasy Grind. It's also on SoundCloud, Podbean, wherever else they host pods. I don't know. Go to FG Metrics on Twitter. You get all the info there.
It's much easier when I just open up my podcast app and boom, it's there. iTunes is the way to go. Or if you're on Android,
I know.
Paul, what's the one on Android that people use? Podcast Republic. Apparently that's one people. I don't know. I've never had an Android, so I really have no idea what the one is for that. Apparently Podcast Republic. That's a way to go. Anyway, before we get into the tee draws, the weather, and the actual picks for the Millionaire Maker, I want to let everyone know about FantasyNational.com. Get a weekly, monthly, or yearly membership. You get access to the mixed condition model, the tournament history, the most customizable stat engine on the planet, ownership projections, event simulator, lineup generators. It's all there, easy to use, super cheap, back-to-back 100K winners the last 2 weeks at the Canadian Open and WGC Bridgestone, plus another $50,000 winner last week at the WGC as well. So just add to the total, at least $1.7 million have been won on DraftKings by members of Fantasy National since March. So become a member, add to that total today, fantasynational.com. I'm a member, you should become one too. Let's talk about the weather. Let's talk about the tee draw. Rick, we'll start with you first. When I went through it, and I posted the link on my Twitter a little bit earlier this morning, that it looks like there's some wind Friday at Bellerive, but it doesn't seem to be any one distinct advantage for any of the tee times. Even the gusty winds get up to like 16 miles per hour. This isn't the Open Championship. I'm not sweating that too much. But the big thing that people have been talking about are potential slower greens. It rained all day today. They said they were trying to slow them down because Kansas or St. Louis has been baked out for so long. Does any of that play into your decision making this week?
Sure. So, Pat, I kind of saw the same things that you did when it comes to the weather draw. Pretty much even across the board for me. I didn't see anything that I'm going to take action on. So kind of throwing that out there right now. As far as the greens and what we've kind of heard early so far in the week, yeah, it seems like the conditions are going to be a little bit different. You know, the greens might be a little slower. I saw that the winning score is now, the odds are now getting to like 12.5. as the line. So it looks like it might be a little bit more of a shootout as opposed to like a high single digit under par type finish. This might get a little bit deeper than that, which kind of opens up, I think, some of the birdie makers again, guys who can really go low. And then also, strokes gained approach was always going to be something important, but we might be able to see some darts thrown this week more than usual.
Geoff, what Rick brings up in terms of the overall total dropping, so instead of being like -10, now it's over under -12. Does that change your decision making on some of the players at all for you?
It doesn't change the decision making on the guys I was already had a lot of confidence in. I'm not going to go and change my approach just because it might be a little bit easier scoring. We're still not really sure, right? But at the same time, I do think that it might lend itself to certain players who are getting a little bit overlooked. It might just benefit from it being a softer course, more of a birdie fest. And if the greens get burned out or something, and things get a little nuts, that's sometimes when we see surprise winners. So I've got a couple names in mind. I think this could help. It's more of like a tournament strategy might change a little bit. But as far as core plays, I'm not going to change anything. Guys that I was committed to, I'm still committed to.
Okay, so I actually sorted this from fantasynational.com, and instead of doing slow greens, I don't think they're going to be slow, but they're not going to be super fast. So I just took average green speed and looked at the past 24 rounds and see who rated out the best in terms of strokes gained putting from that metric. It's Brian Harmon, Phil Mickelson, Jason Day, Kim, Justin Thomas, Terrell Atten, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Kevin Kisner, Affie Barnrat. Other names inside the top 25: Rahm, Berger, Wise, Cantlay, Snedeker, Chris Wood, Rafa Cabrera-Bello, Andrew Landry, Stuart Sink, Brooks Koepka. So when we're thinking about ideal skill set for this course, are we still thinking ball striking, Geoff?
I think so. I mean, you did rattle off some really good putters in there, which is kind of interesting because I feel like those are some of the names that you might want to take a chance on. But at the same time, if the greens are easy and the scoring conditions are good, the ball strikers are just going to go out there and pin it. And if someone has like a decent putting week, who's not a good putter, or if DJ gets hot with the putter or something like that, then it still lends itself to the ball strikers. So I mean, you can mix in a few of these maybe like lower owned players, but I still feel like the extreme ball strikers are going to rise to the top here.
Past 24 rounds in terms of birdies or better gained against the field in those tournaments, the top 10 read as Neiman, DJ, Brooks, Rose, Molinari, Fleetwood, Thomas, Stanley, Brian Gay, Tiger Woods, Ian Poulter, John Rahm. Then you got Wise, Day, Rory Finau, Cantlay, Phil, Troy Merritt, Bryson DeChambeau, and Thora Bjorn Olsen, the Thunder Bear, Jeff's buddy. Rick, what are you looking for as your main stats here?
Yeah, so tee to green, I think, is going to be important here. We don't obviously have as strong of course correlation because this is a rotational major, so we're getting different courses every single year. But tee to green is going to be important, and it's always more predictable than something like strokes gained putting, right? We've seen someone like Keegan or Lucas Glover win a PGA championship because their putter gets hot for a week, and we'd never say those guys are good putters by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm going to look at stats that are more predictable, which are always going to be those tee to green stats. And then I just kind of like to compare majors kind of against themselves, right? So I like to pull up all the majors for the past few seasons, see how guys play in tough tournaments, in tough fields. And we're not relying as much on, obviously course history metrics this week because we don't really have it.
Just to throw back to the tee to green, strokes gained tee to green past 24 rounds on par 70 venues that measure between 72 and 7,400 yards, where Belle Reve should fall most of the days. They might extend it a little bit more, but right now it's playing around like 7,319 yards is what like the total is on the scorecard. That can go lower, that can go higher, but guys that fall past 24 rounds tee to green in that range, removing putting from the situation: DJ Rahm, Rose, List, Stenson, JT, Spieth, Tiger, Rory, Adam Scott, Casey, Finau, Neiman, Keegan, Jim Furyk, Shane Lowry, Jason Day, Daniel Berger, Francesco Molinari, Thomas Peters, that's going to be fun, and Matt Kuchar are in there as well. So let's talk about the big dogs, the guys above $10,000. Just to kick off, you got Dustin up there, you have Rory, you have Spieth, and you have Ricky Fowler. That's the entire range. So I initially was really leaning Rory, and I think I might stick with that. But I don't know how many guys above $10,000 I really want to play. For me, it would be Rory, it would be then Dustin. I'd probably be fading Spieth and Ricky, but it seems like everyone is going to be fading Jordan Spieth this week. Right now, I have projected around like 7% ownership. Jeff, what do we do in this upper range? Do you do a Stars and Scrubs lineup and really start at the top, or are you more comfortable starting in the 9K range?
No, I mean, I'm all for the Stars and Scrubs this week. I mean, I just don't know how you can fade Dustin Johnson, quite frankly. And I look, you can always come up with an idea to fade him, or the conditions, or maybe the course is a little bit too tricky. But you look at the top players in the world right now, and I just don't see anyone coming in with as immaculate a lead up as Dustin. There's just nothing that I can point to really that's going to throw him off outside of really nitpicking, and we can do that if we want. But Rory's been inconsistent. He hasn't been closing out tournaments. Ricky's been up and down. He's been okay, but he's had the big number. Spieth has been all over the place. There's really nothing that Dustin Johnson has done over the last 2 months for me to get off him here. I think the price is affordable. I think you can still pair him with one of the big players here, because there's plenty of players in the 6K range, 7K, low 7K range. So for me, it's an all-in week on Dustin Johnson, quite frankly.
Well, how about, you say that his lead-up form is great. What about that time I picked him to win a tournament and built all my lineups around him, then he missed the fucking cut?
Yeah, that was the Open, Pat. Like, he took a month off. He even admitted after. He's like, I wasn't focused.
Oh, yeah, that'd have been great information to have before the fact, not after the fact.
Well, that's why you don't bet him at the Open, and now you got the info, and then you just get on double down. That's all it is to it. But no, in all seriousness, I just love the way this has led up personally. He had the bad tournament at the Open, and I feel bad for you that you went in on him there. But he bounced back so nicely, and he's so clearly focused now that I just, even if the greens are bad, even if the conditions get a little wonky, I just feel like of the top players, it's going to matter the least to Dustin Johnson, because he's clicking on everything right now. He's got the new putter in the bag last week. It really helped his putting over the last 2 rounds last week, and I just feel like he's a confident player. Nothing's going to stop him this week.
Modeling-wise, Rick, when I rated everything out, and then I did look at in the lead-in form, obviously the miscut at the Open Championship, then a first and a third for Dustin Johnson the past 2 weeks at RBC Canadian Open and then WGC. He does have the lead-in form. He's number 1 in almost any statistical model that you can pump out. He's the number 1 player in the world. All of this stuff helps. Are you going all in on Dustin Johnson?
So I think it's going to be really difficult to do so. And I'm interested to hear when we get down to that, low 7,000 range that Jeff was mentioning, who we would pair up with him. So I've really just started to make, a handful of lineups to see if I can get DJ in it. And I'm having a lot of trouble creating lineups that I like with him. And that's not a knock. He's very clearly the number 1 player in every single model. But I'm having trouble finding 5 guys that I like to construct around him. So I'm interested to hear from Jeff when we get down there. And I just think there's so much value in like the upper 9s, even like the upper 8s and mid 9s is just plentiful with awesome golfers that I probably feel more comfortable starting there. If I was playing in a GPP, I think you're going to probably be able to get Ricky Fowler pretty low owned.
No.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. This is like the ultimate sandwich pricing, right? Where if you want to go up and get DJ or go up and get Rory, who are clearly the top two guys on the slate, like go up and get them. You can do it. Or you can drop down and get Tiger, JT, Brooks, or Rose right below it. Like who's rostering Ricky Fowler at 10-2?
People who love Ricky Fowler because there's an undying love for Ricky Fowler for every single one of these tournaments. Like, I don't think he's going to be the highest owned guy in the slate. I think that's very clearly of the plus 9K guys. I think that Justin Thomas is very much shaping up to be the highest owned when you couple in his pricing, the recent form, and the fact that Justin Rose is dinged up, that people will want to avoid him because of those back problems. That, yeah, it might suck away some ownership from Ricky, but I can see Ricky coming at it like 16, 17% still.
Yeah, and I think he's probably always, 5% higher than he should be because he's a cool guy that everybody likes. And it's kind of the opposite effect of like an Ian Poulter or a Patrick Reed or something like that, who people don't roster him because they don't like him. So I completely understand that, but I just think it's a kind of an awkward pricing for him. So I'm going to tiptoe around the 10s and see what I can combine those guys with, but I'll most likely be creating a more balanced approach this week.
Would you have a problem fading each of the top 6 players, including Justin Thomas, and starting your lineups with Brooks Koepka?
So I love Brooks Koepka in every possible way this week. So I'm probably not that upset about it. Six might be too much. 4 or 5 definitely. If you just look at kind of like implied win odds, and I'm doing like napkin math over here, but those top 4, 5, 6 guys are probably 40 or 45% to win this thing, with someone else coming from the rest of the field winning it either half the time or slightly more. So no, I don't mind just giving up on those 6 guys. JT's close, but Brooks is like my all-in play this week. So no, you could convince me of that.
All right. So Geoff, what do you think that Ricky Fowler's ownership is going to end up coming in at? And would you have a problem fading each of the top 6 guys? Because it seems like you're big on Dustin. So that's probably a big no from you.
Yeah, it's definitely a big no. I think Fowler's good. I think Rick is kind of right. I think he's going to be a little bit lower owned than usual. I don't think he's going to get like into the single digits. I think 12% is a good guess, 10 to 12, maybe 10% in like higher buy-ins or something like that, and then the Millie Maker a little bit higher just because of his popularity. I will say this, outside of the Dustin options, I think Ricky would probably be the guy I might pair with someone in the top K range if I wasn't going Dustin, or just pair him with Dustin. So he'd be, I guess, kind of like my second GPP choice. As far as fading them, no. I want a piece of Dustin Johnson this week.
All right, then. If Rick is big on Brooks in that 9K level, Geoff, what are you looking at in the 9K level?
I mean, we're really big on Tommy Fleetwood still. He was ranked second for us coming in our survival guide. Justin Rose is interesting as a GPP play. I made the argument last night. It's either the back issue is either a minor thing and he just needed a week off and just was being precautionary, or it's a bigger deal. And you have to remember, when Justin Rose had back issues last year, he started to play terrible. So it's a risk, but I do understand going with him over Fleetwood or something like that in that range.
So
I'm still interested in Jason Day. I haven't quite decided between Fleetwood and Jason Day. Those are my top 2 plays in that range.
So yeah, I like Fleetwood more than I like Day. The entire range, like you got Tiger at 9-9. That's probably just an insta fade for me, especially if he's going to have to hit driver off a lot of these holes. Then you got Justin Thomas, Brooks, Rose, Fleetwood, Molinari, Rahm, Jason Day. Like for me, I think I would go. I might end up just playing Rose because I think that his ownership is going to be like half of what everyone else is, and I think that Justin Thomas is going to suck up a lot. Rick, could you plausibly fade Justin Thomas in this spot?
Wow, probably not. And I'm usually the guy who fades everyone, right? Like I like the chaos, I like the low ownership, but Justin Thomas in this spot, because the pricing came out early enough before the win last week. He's now priced $9,700. He's got much better odds to win this. At least Vegas likes him more. So if this was a week where pricing came out after the win and he was, 10,200 or something like that, I'm sure I'd fade him. But I still think we have some value built into this price, considering he was awesome last week. He's your defending champion, obviously at a different course, but he seems to fit a lot of courses, but especially PGA Championship type courses and what we would expect to see at Bellerive this week. So if the pricing came out a couple days later, you could probably get me to fade him, but not currently.
Okay, so if he's going to be, do you think that he'll end up being the chalkiest play from this range? And what would you guess his ownership's going to be?
Yeah, I hope so. And I'm candidly terrible at guessing ownership. But I would say Justin Thomas comes in, 25%, something like that?
Yeah, I think that he'll end up being the highest owned guy on the slate, and I'm curious to see what that does to everyone else in that $9,000 range, that if you can end up getting Brooks at like 10%, something like that, that would be kind of amazing, and that'd be a shove spot on Brooks, or even Fleetwood, or even Rahm for that matter. How do you think the ownership shakes out here, Geoff?
Yeah, I guess when I look at it, I mean, we haven't done our final projections yet, but I think I'd pretty much agree he's going to be one of the top 3 owned players. And for me, I know the form is good. I know Justin Thomas is amazing. Look, I was on him last week at 8,800. I told everyone to play him because he was too cheap. But I think I'm okay fading him. And the reason is, I mean, now Jason Day is cheaper than him. Now Tommy Fleetwood is cheaper than him, and they're going to be lower owned. And I don't mind. I don't mind taking players who are still trending up. You know, it's a little bit of a tough spot for Justin Thomas. I mean, he's obviously coming off the win. He's playing well, but he's the defending champ. I mean, there's a little bit more pressure there. So I think it's an okay fade spot. I'm not going out of my way to say Justin Thomas is like an immediate fade, but if you come to the same conclusion as me, you like the price discounts on Day or Fleetwood, I think that's a good swerve.
Is it crazy to you that Molinari might be the one that comes in with like no ownership in this range?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's funny how quickly people forget, right? I mean, the guy's the best player in the world 2 weeks ago, and now he has one poor event, so to speak, and he's like back to 2015 Francesco. So he might be the ultimate GPP play in this range.
Rick, after Thomas, after Brooks, is there anyone else in this range that really does pique your interest, or are you good just taking minimal shares of these guys?
Yeah, a little bit. So kind of to what we talked about at the top of the show, where if you told me the winning score was going to be 8 under, I'd like Tommy Fleetwood a lot more. You know, he's capable of going super low any round and vaulting him up the leaderboards. I get more concerned about Fleetwood if I knew today that the winning score was going to be 15 or 16 under, right? I think it's just a different style. But I like Fleetwood, and then no surprise, Jason Day, who I think he's almost criminally priced at $9,000. He's got elite tournament history. He's playing certainly well enough coming into this. He's probably, for me, strokes gained wise and just model wise, he's a top 5 player on this slate, and he's priced at, I think, something like golfer number 12, which is just wrong. So I think there's plenty of upside for Day to, you know, he doesn't have to win this to return plenty of value to you.
If you're going to go on the assumption that the winning score could be something like -14, -15, -16, does this seem like a spot where it's finally time for Jon Rahm to break through?
So I have a lot of thoughts about Jon Rahm. He would certainly be in the group of players that I could win this at 15 or 16 under. Brooks, obviously, Justin Thomas, like those guys can all get to like 15 or 16 under. The only concern I have about Rahm is the putter's been so bad, and he hasn't had a lot of great success in majors. So if you just kind of look up what he's done, he's played, 7 majors in his career, the 4th place at the Masters, and then no other top 25s. And he's missed the cut 3 times. You know, he's one of these guys, and I hate to get into the narrative side of it because I like him so much, but it's like if things start going south early, they stay headed south. And he posts one big number, and he kind of, you know, gets out of control and the wheels fall off. And it's very narrative based, which I hate getting into, but it's just now, you know, 7 times, which is obviously a small sample, like it shows up a lot, and it just has me legit worried.
Geoff, in or out on Rahm?
I'm actually kind of in. If I end up, you know, seeing higher projections on Jason Day or something, I might sprinkle him in as a GPP over Day. And I've been anti-Rahm, you know, this year in the majors, but this is an easier setup. I really feel like Rahm could get going early here and be in contention. He's not my pick to win, but at 9,100, I could see him outperforming Day here for sure. Okay,
8K range, this is where we're getting some of these lower owned, really high upside players. Like, we have elite players in this range that could end up being like 3% owned, which is just completely bonkers to me. I mean, I get it, but it's just crazy to see these numbers next to these names. So you got Reed at 89, then Hideki, Stenson, Noren, Sergio, Cantlay, Phil, Xander, Tony Finau, Bubba Watson, Paul Casey. That is the entire $8,000 range. Right now, as sub 6% plays, I have Hideki at 5.7. I have Sergio at just around 1%. Noren around 4%. Phil around 4%. Xander around 4%. And who's the other one? Bubba Watson around 8%. As the week has gone along, I've talked myself into Patrick Reed, Henrik Stenson, and Bubba Watson. I'm going to try to play a lot of lineups with those three guys in them, and it doesn't seem like you're really breaking the bank in terms of ownership, and it does lead to that really balanced lineup. Rick, what do you make of this 8K range?
Yeah, there's a lot to make of it. So I think that we kind of have this thought where it applies to Patrick Reed and it applies to Brooks Koepka, where it's like, oh, they've already won theirs this year, right? And we just kind of say, okay, they've won theirs. They're not going to win again. It's hard to win two majors. And of course it is, but there's a reason that they've already won this year. Like, they're elite golfers, right? And Patrick Reed, for winning at the Masters, has been completely forgotten since then. And I think when you can access him at $8,900, that's a number that I'm interested in. And then outside of that, I'll sprinkle Hideki because I'm kind of a Hideki truther a bit. I think he got, pretty unlucky, not unlucky, but he blows the cut on 18 a few weeks back, and then kind of just jades all of his owners. So I'll sprinkle some Hideki, and then really the guy that I think fits the best is Cantlay. His price is coming up a little bit. If you look at the strokes gain numbers over the last it's over his last 22 rounds. He's basically like the 10th best in this field. So he can do a lot of things really well, and I think he fits Bellerive as well.
Please tell me, Geoff, that you're picking Sergio to win.
No, I'm done with Sergio. Sergio and I are on a break. This range is interesting. It's a little bit tough to unlock. It's taking me a bit. I wasn't really decisive last week or yesterday, but Patrick Cantlay definitely sticks out for us. I mean, he's one of our highest ranked for the league for sure, and he's probably going to be a little bit chalky. But at the same time, I want some exposure to a player who's been really consistent this year, performing well in higher level competitions. Really outside of his U.S. Open, like T45, he's been like top 20ing. So I like the lead up. I do like this venue for him too. The other player that I think I'm going to get some exposure to is Alex Noren. I know people are going to look at last week and say, wow, he gained all his strokes putting and he was terrible. And he was kind of terrible tee to green. But you look back, his last four starts, he won in France over a tough field. He was in contention at the Open in another tough field. So his form has been okay. You just, last week is last week. It's a lead up. He was still T31, improved over the weekend. It's a little bit like Justin Thomas coming in last year. And again, if this course plays a little bit easier, if things get a little bit funky, Alex Noren is someone I'm not concerned about dealing with a little bit of adversity or different greens. He's one of the best putters on tour. So I think he's a great GPP play this week. People forget. People all over Alex Noren winning a major this year. And now people are going to get off him at the last major. I think that's a mistake.
One word answer from you, Geoff, here. Would you go Cantlay or Finau?
Cantlay.
Cantlay or Xander?
Cantlay.
Rick, would you go Cantlay or Finau?
Cantlay.
Would you go Cantlay or Xander?
Cantlay.
All right, so it's Patrick Cantlay again, and he's the one who's projected to have, Finau is at a projected higher ownership than Cantlay, but both of them are developing into the chalkier players from this area. The other one is Paul Casey at $8,000. I think Casey sets up exceptionally well. We know that he just tends to make the cut in every single major. He's always seemingly underpriced in major. Is he ever going to win? Probably not. The guy rarely wins. And I know he's your boy, Ulrich, but if he can just come through with a top 10 here, he's going to more than pay off his price.
Yeah, absolutely. He's way too cheap. He's almost not worth talking about because he's just too cheap. He's a great ball striker. Again, maybe if these greens just play a little bit slower, maybe that works right into Paul Casey's wheelhouse. He's a player I could see benefiting from stranger conditions. I think back to the Wells Fargo when they had screwed up greens and some random decent ball strikers won who couldn't putt. So, who knows? Maybe this is Paul Casey's time, but he is too cheap. We definitely have him still highly ranked. His ball striking hasn't really been the issue. He just didn't play well around the greens last week. So, yeah, definitely in on Paul Casey at this price.
Rick, you in on Casey, or is that just sort of a fade for you?
I kind of agree with Geoff that it's almost a little boring to talk about. He's going to make the cut. He's going to finish 14th. He's going to be just fine. I don't know what else there is to really dive into on Casey, but someone who I think is kind of similarly always underpriced in these major type events is Kuchar, right? And he had the really ugly missed cut at the Canadian where he was really chalk. And then he did exactly what Kuchar does every single week, where I open up the PGA app on Sunday and I'm like, oh, Kuchar like top 15 last week because he just, finds his way into the top 15 every single week. So I think he's a viable option as well. And then there's a couple more guys down here, but they're a lot of boring players in Casey and Kuchar, and then we can find a couple of punts as well.
All right, so if you had to fade the chalk in the $8,000 area, who would you be more likely to fade, Casey or Finau, Rick?
Oh, I'd fade Casey just because I think Finau has the upside. I think if I was playing in cash games, that'd be fine. But Finau can legit just birdie you to death and score you a ton of DraftKings points.
What do you think, Geoff?
I think I'd fade Finau.
Okay. I'm kind of undecided. I think I just might play them both, but I think if I had to fade one, just looking at the ownerships right now, Finau I have somewhere around like 20%, Casey around 18%, so there's no real difference there. I'd probably just go with Finau and bank on the upside, although I do think that he comes in with higher ownership, and this seems like the perfect spot. Although his major track, Rick, you brought up all those like major track records and how people have finished. Finau must have one of the most impressive finishing results in majors for his career.
He does. He's basically, I have it back to 2008. So you get a lot of like Phil Mickelson majors in here as well. And Tiger's on this list too. But Finau's basically 8th most DraftKings points on average in all the majors since 2008. Now he's got one of the smallest sample sizes. It's only 10 starts. Xander's got 6. He's above him. But in terms of just DraftKings points, it's more than Dustin, it's more than Henrik, it's more than Tiger. Obviously, those guys go back with a much larger sample size, but Finau's been really, really impressive in these majors.
Yeah, see, I'm still big on Bubba. I still think he's my favorite play from down in this range, and I think that he's going to come in lower owned. I like the setup for him with a lot of the holes going dogleg left. You're going to have to shape some shots. The distance will certainly not be a problem for him, and with these gigantic greens, I think that he's a very good lag putter. Sort of same with Stenson. He's not a good putter, but he's good at lag putting, so that should come in handy as it goes along. But as part of the conversation that we talked about earlier, if you do fade like the top 6 guys or the $10,000 guys and you construct your team of these guys and maybe one of the $9,000 guys, Geoff, doesn't that team start to look pretty good?
It does. I mean, going balanced here, I mean, we've talked about this 8K range for a bit because there's a lot of good players in it, right? So I understand the desire or the pull towards going balanced for sure. Again, I just come back to my argument. None of these players have as bulletproof a lead up as Dustin Johnson, so I'd still lean that. But I definitely get the pull. I mean, this range is chock full of talent. You can get Casey and Finau in a lineup together, like that's awesome. It's hard for me to argue against it, quite frankly.
All right, let's talk about the 7K range. So if you're going to pair guys up, I can see some players in the upper 7s going overlooked because people want to build stars and scrubs and immediately drop themselves to the lower tiers with all this. But you mentioned Kuchar, Rick. I'm in on Kuchar as well, but I like Bryson right below him.
Yeah, and I think they're both fine, right? Bryson is all over the place narrative-wise. You hear a lot of good things about him. You hear a lot of bad things about him. He's always in the news for one reason or another. But what's overlooked is that he is just a really good golfer who can show up in these type of events, and he's going to grind you 4 rounds no matter if he's out of it or not. So that's always appealing to me. Jordan Spieth is a similar guy who I think grinds a lot of holes too. So that's a good attribute that I look for in fantasy. But there is a guy here, Mark Leishman, who I'm just warming up on. Every time I run a new model, run something new, his name pops up. Just to kind of talk through some of the things here, last week, he was one of the few guys who finished in the top 15 and he lost strokes putting. So he lost a half a stroke per round last week, which is uncharacteristic of him. He's usually a plus putter. So I do think there's ceiling for him to access this week. He's a little more volatile than some of these other options. He's kind of been all over the place with his finishes, but he's shown us that he can win tough fields, tough events. He won the Arnold Palmer last year. He had that great run in the playoffs last year. So he's a legitimate player taking his career to a new trajectory.
The other players who finished inside the top 20 at Bridgestone last week who lost strokes putting, Brooks was the big one, led tee to green, lost putting, ended up coming T5. Leishman was one. Ross Fisher was another. Then it was Rafa Cabrera-Bello and John Rahm and Gary Woodland were the other players to finish inside the top 20, yet lose strokes on the green. Great ball striking weeks. Who from this upper $7,000 tier, Geoff, do you think you're going with? Is it Leishman as well? Because I can never really pull the trigger on Leishman. It feels like he's getting a lot of buzz now coming off the good week. It seemed like he was everyone's sneaky play, and then all of a sudden people just love Mark Leishman.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously I love Mark Leishman. He's one of my favorite players, but He's been up and down this year. I mean, and it is interesting that he had a really good week with the driver, and that does pique my interest a little bit, like at WGC, because he's been awful with it this year. Very inconsistent, a little bit inconsistent with the putter too. I'm completely look. One thing I 100% agree with you, Pat, on is Bryson. I listened to you and Feinberg talk a little bit before this. I listened to the Bryson part. It basically echoes my exact thoughts. The guy grinded last week. He's coming in here. He's a great all-around player now. He reminds me of Justin Thomas at this point a little bit last year. Everything, I think, sets up for a nice Bryson week. I'm completely all in on that. We have him highly ranked in the guide still, too. So if people want to fade him because off the course, BS, whatever, good. I'll take all the Bryson. Leishman, I might mix in a GPP play. I just don't trust him as much as normal right now because he's been so up and down with the putter and the driver. But I get what Rick was saying. Definitely a high upside play. Going down, a couple other players I like, but Bryson for me in the high sevens, it's the play.
Is Joaquin Niemann good chalk or bad chalk, Geoff?
If he's going to be chalk, he's bad chalk.
Rick?
I think he's actually good chalk because his price is where it should be.
So you're going to be using Niemann?
I got a lot of guys down here in the sevens, but yeah, I'll have more Niemann than I've had probably in any week because I wasn't tailing him up to when he was getting to like 9,000. I wasn't tailing him up there. Now I think this is a fair price.
Would someone like, if you talk about last week, WGC Bridgestone, like Leishman because he lost half a stroke putting but still played really well, did someone like Byung-Hun An really interest you because he lost almost 10 strokes putting and still wasn't a disaster?
Yeah, so really when I look back and look at either last week or the week before and see these guys who are awesome tee to green, but losing it on the greens or at least to a point where it's completely uncharacteristic for them, right? Like Luke List is going to lose strokes on the green every week, but if it's more than usual, yeah, I do think there is obviously some room to normalize that a bit and be able to come back to the mean, and there's upside, which is really what you're looking for. So yeah, those guys are on my list. Even someone like I like Ian Poulter in this range too. You know, it's a major week, so we get a lot of new players in. Kind of opposite of Ricky Fowler. You know, he's Poulter's 5% less owned because everyone hates him, and he had that collapse at the WGC, which was very public, but still finished in the top 10. He's been awesome tee to green and just strokes gained in general. So it's going to be tough to get me away from a guy who I know can compete in these big type events for, $7,400.
Geoff, would you go Poulter or Zach Johnson?
Yeah, we talked about this on the pod last night. Both guys are actually ranked quite high for us. Zach Johnson's a player. I actually let my bias get in the way of playing him because I hate his caddy so much, but I think he's actually a good play this week. He's just been top 20 in tough fields the entire last 2 months. And you've got to look at where the results are coming from. T12 at the US Open, top 20 at the Open. He's playing well in good fields. So I would actually go Zach Johnson. I just also want to say from this range, we skipped over him, but Leishman versus Louis, I take Oosthuizen, same kind of deal.
You take Louis every single time.
It's because he's cool. He's good. He's top 20 every week.
Maybe you're right. Maybe that's the way to go with all of this. I don't know, but I just never know what to do with Louis in these situations. Sell me on Louis.
Well, he's been very consistent. I mean, we look back. I didn't think he was going to be that highly ranked for us, but then you look back at the fields he's been playing well in. I mean, he's making the cuts at the majors. He was up in contention for 3 rounds last week. I know he fell back a little bit, but there's not one thing he's doing poorly, which is why he actually spit out pretty well for us. And at 7,700, again, you could compare him to a guy like Leishman or even a guy like Webb Simpson, who they're up and down, up and down. Louis just churning out top 20s. It looks like, he's just priming for that big week, kind of like Justin Thomas last week. He was coming in with just a bunch of mediocre results, and then he popped. I think that might be the case with Louis, so that's why I take him over a lot of those plays.
I have no interest in Louis here, Rick. Do you?
No, none whatsoever.
All right. So the rest of the guys that I like from this range, from the $7,000 tier, of course, my main man Luke List is buried somewhere in here. He's $7,100. How could you go wrong? Luke List, let's do this. I do like Byung-Hun An. I like Rafa Cabrera Bayo a lot, actually. I think that people are just sort of off of him, have forgotten about him. And I think that his game is slowly starting to turn around a little bit, so I like to see that. And that's really it for me. I have some interest in Hatton, a little bit in Ryan Moore, but I don't want to get too crazy in this range. What do we do with Kyle Stanley, Rick? Is he good chalk or bad chalk? Because everyone's on him now.
Yeah, so I think he's bad chalk. He's one of these guys that pops off every now and then, and I love the volatility, but it just doesn't really move the needle to go down to that range when I do think there's better options here, right? Like even someone like Kevin Chappell, Pat, last week I was all in on him last week and he was brutal, but it was all in one category. It was all putting. He was 8th in the field in strokes gained tee to green. He was 2nd best in strokes gained approach and dead last in putting. It was like 2 strokes around or something insane. So for all the same reasons that I liked him last week, I think that kind of stabilizes a bit. I have to get back on him. And then, our good buddy Luke List, who, believe it or not, has popped up in every model for the last 3 years, seems to be backing it up a lot more recently. And I looked this up specifically for this show. He's actually putting worse in the last 20 weeks than he has in the last 200. So we know Luke List is a bad putter. He's actually been worse recently, which I think is a good thing because we're able to kind of, again, tap into that upside because his tee to green game has been so good.
I'll throw 2 more names out to you, Geoff. One is Danny Willett, one is Gary Woodland. It's just sort of a peak thing for Willett. I think that we're getting an opportunity to buy low if he's actually back to where he used to be. And with Woodland, I mean, we know the Woodland story. The guy's going to ball strike to death and he won't be able to putt or chip. But hey, maybe these greens are so big he can't miss them, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, Woodland he's coming back to where he was at the start of the year, ball striking wise. He's first in strokes gained off the tee last week at Bridgestone, 7th in strokes gained tee to green. And that's impressive in a really strong field. So that screams to me he's got a really nice floor for this week. You're right. I mean, look, Gary Woodland's best finish in the major is T12. I do think this is a really good chance for him to beat that. He's one of my favorite plays this week at this range, for sure. But I recognize the fact that, he's got to get the putter going. He's got to do something more than he does. At the same time, I like him more than Luke List. I mean, I think he brings a little bit more consistency.
How dare you? How dare you?
I know. I'm never coming back on this show again, but I got to go with my guy. I mean, he's ranked pretty highly for us. I like the trend too, like 6 of 6 over his last cuts. I think he's a really interesting play. He's got the win in his back pocket. He's probably coming in with a little bit of good mojo. So I like that. I don't mind Danny Willett as a GPP pick. Shane Lowry is another name I'd throw out there. He's been driving it really well lately. He's just struggled with the putter, played well at Barracuda for times. And I'm kind of with Rick on Chappell over Stanley. Stanley's best finish in a major is T39. He's been inconsistent. He pops, and then he just doesn't follow it up this year. I think Chappell's a good swerve.
Yeah, I think that Stanley is shaping up to be a good ownership fade in this spot. If he hits, and you live with the results, but it's an easy way to box out a lot of people in the field who are just playing pure recency bias. Rick,
just go throw $5 on Stanley on the each way. He's like 100-1 still.
No, he's down to like 70-1.
No, is he? Okay.
Yeah. Luke List is down to 100-1 now. I saw this morning.
That's probably because you bet him, didn't you?
Of course I did. I bet him at 150, and now he's down to 100. I've already won, Geoff. I've already got my value. That's the way I have to look at things because I never hit winners. Is there anyone else in the $7,000 range we didn't discuss that you do want to talk about, Geoff, whether it be like Scott or Keegan or one of those guys?
I mean, Ryan Moore piques my interest a little bit because he's been so consistent tee to green and so bad with the putter. And I do feel like he's someone who could pop at a course like this. It's not overly tricky. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to just force him in, but I just feel like I need to bring him up because he has been really consistent this year, and he's probably going to get overlooked and be like 2% owned. So that's the only other player.
Rick, would you go Ryan Moore or Terrell Atten?
Oh, Ryan Moore by a mile.
Okay. Is there any overlooked guys that you found here in this $7,000 range?
No, I think that covers it, and we're entering the range where it starts to get really, really hairy for me. So I'm interested to hear what Geoff has to say.
Okay, so in this $6,000 level, we've dropped down below $7,000, $6,000 players. Here are the ones that are popping up as the consensus picks that everyone loved. One is Thorbjorn Olesen, the Thunderbär, because he ended up with a nice showing. Obviously, his lead-in form is really, really good. I have him projected right now at probably a floor of 11%, potentially up as high as 16%. He's $6,700. He seems massively underpriced in this field, especially based on his odds. I mean, he's down to 70-1 right now to win this tournament. He's incredibly undercursed, so that's never good. Rick, is he good chalk or bad chalk?
I hate to say it, but I think he's bad chalk.
Whoa!
I know. I'm impressed by the kid too, but I guess maybe it's the way that I'm building lineups that I probably don't need to get down this low. And what we've seen is, these really low price chalky players are so volatile. It's tough for me when I play such a tight core to put any of these guys in that core because I know I'm going to get, max levels of exposure to them. So I'm looking for some safer options, some guys that I think have, a little bit of a longer track record than what the 5 or 6 weeks that Olson's been on everybody's radar.
Well, I find this low price chalk is extremely volatile anyway, and Olson's a very volatile player where we see the results. We can see he can go out and win, and then he can go miss the cut the next week. He's just that type of guy. So I will be fading Thorbjorn Olsen in this spot. Call it an ownership play, but if I can box him out of the field, and I can box out Kyle Stanley from the field, and those guys finish I guess they make the cut, then it was worth playing them. But if they both miss, I'm in a very good spot. And there's other guys I like probably equally as good and make the ownership decision for me. Geoff, you're not fading him though?
No, I think this is just too good an opportunity. I think it's very, very good chalk. A few reasons why. I mean, first of all, look at what he's been doing against elite competition. I mean, WGC, Open Championship, beating Francesco Molinari when he was playing at the top of the world. I mean, these are things you just don't get from $6,700 players. You have to take advantage. The other factor is, Rick brought this up too. People do not have to go down to this range in this soft pricing. It's going to keep his ownership slightly depressed.
No, it won't, because people will take Dustin. People will take Dustin and Rory and drop down here because people will see the value on this price and be like, oh, there's my starter. I bet you the most common team.
Half the people playing don't even know who Thorbjorn Olsen is.
You say that. People are more savvy nowadays.
I don't know. I don't believe it. I'd be shocked if he's over 15%. He should be 25% owned or something, and he's not going to be. So even if he is 18, 19, I still think you're getting him at a lesser percent owner. This is the biggest pricing mistake in the field. So again, I believe in the talent. He's top 10 at Augusta the first time he played there. He's got multiple top 10s in majors. Playing the form of his life, I think you need to take advantage personally. I do like other players in this range. There's a couple other players we have popping, but no, I'll be overweight on Thorbjorn.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then, Rick. Would you rather play Olsen at 14% or Hao Tong at 2%?
Oh, God. I guess Olsen at 14%.
And Geoff, you'd be on the same page, not close?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting discussion. Hao Tong's one of the GPP plays, but I'd take Olsen.
All right, so the other guy who's shaping up to be relatively chalky, at least from what Fantasy National is telling me, and I'm not sure if it's going to be as highly as 13% as they have him projected right now, but Russell Henley is the other one that I can see cracking double digits down in this spot below $7,000. I like Russell Henley. He rated out really well for me, but I'm curious to ask you, Geoff, do you think that he is going to crack double digits in terms of ownership?
I don't think so. I think he hasn't played for 3 weeks, and people are probably wondering what he's doing. And he shot 80 at the Open, and it's going to piss a bunch of people off because I told people to play him there. So I don't think he's going to get super chalky personally. He might hit 10, but he's another player we have ranked pretty high, and I don't mind getting back on him here at all. This is a much more traditional setup. If it turns into a birdie fest, that's Russell Henley's wheelhouse in my opinion. So I like getting back on him here. Personally, especially if you think Thorbjorn's going to get too chalky, I don't mind that. You get him at a little bit lesser ownership. I'll throw this out. The other player we have ranked pretty high this week is Ross Fisher.
I really like Ross Fisher as well. I've already spoke about he was one of the few players who lost strokes putting last week at Bridgestone. The ball striking is coming back, and people forget Ross Fisher was trending really nicely, and he got hurt in March, and then he was just abysmal for like 4 months. It seems like he's over that. Do you have any interest in Ross Fisher, Rick?
No, not particularly. I think he's better than some of these plays down here, but I'm basically throwing darts at this point. I think there's two guys that interest me at $6,900 because they rate out very similarly, which are Billy Horschel and Bo Hostler.
Those are my two guys too.
Really? Oh, same wavelength. We should go on tour. Essentially, these guys are, both putting well at the moment. We've seen Billy Horschel win a playoff. He won the whole thing, right? He won the FedEx Cup. And then we've seen Bo Hostler at least compete in a major, right? Didn't he have a U.S. Open 36-hole lead or something? Or am I making that up? But both are playing really well at the moment, and I think they're more legitimate contenders than some of these other guys under 7,000 actually are.
So the way that I'm constructing my lineups, I think it's going to be a lot like you, Rick, where I'm going to have my concentrated core of my upper 7s, 8s, and $9,000 area. I'll probably might have a dash of these $10,000 guys, but maybe I'll try to get 5 of those guys in one lineup, and I'll be dipping into this area very minimally. And Horschel was going to be one of them. Bo Hostler, Kevin Na. I really like Nick Watney this week as a GPP flyer, and I just feel like for what I would have to own like Olesen at, I can take 4 of those guys in lieu of one Olesen when I combine the ownership, so I can spread it out in my lineups a little bit more. Jeff, does that make any sense to you?
No, because Olsen's gonna top 5 and screw you. So
he's not going to top 5. You want to bet me? I'll give you even money he doesn't top 5.
no, I'm not taking that bet. Get out of here.
Is there anyone else like just off the board flyers that you might be taking? Because I think, what's his name, Justin Harding? Is that the guy that everyone he's been killing it on like the Asian tour with all of his wins in a row?
No, I'm not interested in Justin Harding. You could, I mean, if you really want to get fancy, you could go down and play the Wizard, Ted Potter Jr., 6,200.
I have a better move for Ted Potter than anything. I was really surprised to see his number, and we know that he can play at a birdie fest, but he's 20-1 to top 20.
Yeah, that's not bad. I don't mind that play. I mean, I'm kind of serious. I mean, if you're going to go down, you might as well just go down all the way. He should probably be at like 6,500 or something. So the only other name that we didn't really throw out that I don't mind, Anirban Lahiri, 6,800, playing quite well right now. Doesn't mind a birdie fest either. So that's the other 6K range guy.
Yeah, good type of course for Lahiri. I guess JJ Spawn coming off a T3 at Barracuda isn't all that bad too. Any more just randos from down here, Rick, that you like?
So I actually Googled Justin Harding, and the first 2 results were some hair salon. So I'm not sure if that's a great sign for a golfer that you might want to roster this week. But no, I think you guys have nailed it. I'd be slightly interested in someone like Andrew Landry, who we've seen find success, obviously, maybe Aaron Wise. And to Jeff's point, Lahiri did pop up on a few of the models and visuals that I was putting together. So if I can concentrate it, if I have to go down this far, and I can concentrate around just those handful of guys that we've kind of chatted on, I'm comfortable doing so.
So for me, in terms of overall lineup strategy, I think I'll be playing more balanced, dipping very minimally, and spreading it out, spreading the wealth around. I won't be I will be massively overweight on some of these 6K guys, meaning I'll have them in like 2 lineups because they're all like 2%, 1% owned. But I'm thinking about playing 20 lineups in the Millionaire Maker and then putting the 20 into the $4 as well. Rick, what do you think your exposure is going to be in terms of tournament selection this week?
Yeah, so I really am a big time believer in only playing tourneys that I can max enter. So I'll be playing like the long drive, the single entry. I'll do the 20 max. I'll get my touches in on the millie. I won't be maxing it, but it is an opportunity where I think you get, from 8 to 9, even 9,500. Like, I think that's where the value's at, which is rare. I think this pricing feels a little bit different than a lot of other majors where you might have 6 or 7 guys over 10,000 and you might have some like Stuart Sinks at $6,800 that you can pair together. This just feels a little bit different. And I think the value's kind of in that 8 to 9,500 range.
What do you think, Jeff? What do you think are how many lineups you might end up playing and the sort of build that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I might take a piece of something in the Millie Maker, so we'll see there. But, for me, outside of it, I like the 150. I mean, the 3 entry max, that I almost always hit that up during the majors. If I'm not going to go up to the 5.5, I think the 150 is a really good structure, and it's not as top heavy for a payout. So I'll definitely hit up that. And then, there's other good single entries that are lower buy-in to like $12.33. So that's what I like most about Major Week. You get a little bit more variety.
All right, that'll do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Remember to tune in tomorrow. That would be Wednesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the DraftKings YouTube channel. And you can catch it on demand on the podcast feed and on YouTube as well. Live chat, taking your questions. And don't forget to get into the comment section right now. Give the episode a like, leave your DraftKings handle and your favorite play. If you had to use 100% of one player below $8,000, I want to know who that player would be. Rick, tell everyone what you got going on for right now, what's already out, and what's coming up.
Yep, so I've got the preview video and all the tools updated. Obviously, for this week, I've got the one and done video out. Everything that is now in video form will also be in podcast form. So it's DFS on demand if you just want to search it in iTunes or Spotify. Rick Run Good YouTube channel, and hit me up on Twitter. Tell me what's going on. It's at DFS on demand.
Jeff, what do you got going on at both DK Live and the DK Playbook and FantasyGolfMetrics.com?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously download the DK Live app. I mean, you get updates from me and other smarter people too on the blurbs and news section and lots of stuff. But it's a great app. So, and then fantasygolfmetrics.com, we got the survival guide with a bunch of information, ranks that comes out every week. It's $5 for a weekly subscription. Few articles, chat, tons of tools to take advantage of too. So definitely a site you want to check out, at FG Metrics on Twitter, and I'm at the Fantasy Grind on Twitter.
All right, I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. My betting cheat sheet will come out post-chat tomorrow on my Facebook page. Plus, there'll be hyperlinks to it from my column on dkplaybook.com, where I will have my updated DK cheat sheet later on Tuesday night, complete with highest-owned players, pivot plays, and low-owned GPP sprinkles. I think we've talked about almost all of them here, so you probably already know who they are if you've watched this long. Enter those giveaways, like I mentioned off the top. If you want to go on Twitter and Facebook and share around the content, it'd be greatly appreciated. At me, your DK handle after you do so, and boom, you're in the draw for some DK bucks. I'll announce the winners on Wednesday's show. Finally, FantasyNational.com, 1.7, at least 1.7 million won on DraftKings by members since March. Let's get that number up around, you know what, I don't even want to say 2 million, 3 million. Let's have a Millionaire Maker member winner this week, and you can do that with all the tools and data provided by the site. Listen, if you're going to play more than $10 per week on DraftKings or the betting market or whatever, I highly suggest that you become a member of FantasyNational.com. It'll guide you in the right direction. Plus, it'll cut down on the amount of research time you have to do. Streamline it all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. Good luck. Someone win a milli. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!